The local sheriff was hiring a deputy, so Gomer, who wasn't exactly the sharpest tool in the shed, decided to apply. Sheriff: "All right, Gomer, what's 1 and 1? Gomer: "Wands." The sheriff scratched his head. "Not what I expected, but technically right." Sheriff: "Which 2 days of the week start with T?" Gomer: "Today and tomorrow." The sheriff nodded. "Didn't see that coming, but can't argue with it." Sheriff: "All right, Gomer. Who killed Abraham Lincoln?" Gomer thought long and hard before saying, "I don't know." The sheriff sighed. "Well, go home and think on that one." Later at the pool hall, Gomer's buddies asked how it went. Gomer grinned. "It went great. First day on the job, and I'm already working a murder case." One dot. Billy Bob and Luther were chatting one afternoon when Billy Bob said, "Buddy, I think it's time for a vacation. But this year I'm doing things differently. Every time I took your advice, things got a little complicated." "How so?" Luther asked. "Well, 3 years ago, you told me to go to Hawaii. Erline got pregnant. 2 years ago, you said the Bahamas. Erline got pregnant again. Last year, you suggested Tahiti. Guess what? Erline got pregnant again." Luther shook his head and asked, "So what's the plan this year?" Billy Bob grinned. "This time, I'm taking Erline with me." 2 dots. A priest and a taxi driver were waiting in line for judgment at the pearly gates. The taxi driver was first. He went to St. Peter and said, "I am Brandon Wilson, taxi driver in New York for 15 years. St. Peter looked at his list and smiled. "Welcome, Mr. Wilson. Take this silken robe and this golden staff and enter the gates of heaven." The taxi driver walked through the gates wearing his silken robe and bearing his golden staff. The priest then walked to St. Peter and boomed, "I am Father Dan Snow, who has preached at St. Mary's Church for 50 years. St. Peter looked at his list and smiled. "Welcome, Mr. Snow. Take this wool robe and this wooden staff and enter the gates of heaven." "Wait a minute," the priest said. "Why does the taxi driver get a better robe and staff than me? I've spent almost my whole life dedicated to the church." "Up here, we work by results," said St. Peter. "While he drove, people prayed. While you preached, people slept." 3 dots. One day, a taxi driver picked up a tourist in an airport, and the tourist told the driver to drive him to the hotel. While on the way to the hotel, the tourist started bragging about his stuff he owns. "Tourist, you see this camera? It can take 120 frames per second video. Very fast." The driver just nodded and continued driving. "Tourist, I have a sport car that goes from 0 to 100 in 3 seconds. Very fast." The driver just nodded and kept silent. "Tourist, I also have a phone that can download a full-length movie under 3 minutes. Very fast." The driver just nodded and stayed quiet. Soon, the driver finally arrived at the hotel, and the tourist pulls out his wallet, and to his surprise, the taximeter showed that it cost nearly $1,000 in total. "Tourist, why is it very expensive?" The taxi driver slowly turns around and looks at him with a big smile and said, "Driver, taximeter, very fast, Nanga." 2 old ladies, Dolly and Ruby, were talking about their grandchildren. Dolly said, "Each year I send each of my grandchildren a card with a generous check inside. I never hear from them. Never receive a thank you message." Ruby replies, "I too send my grandchildren a very generous check. I hear from them within a week after they receive it. In fact, they each pay me a personal visit." "Wow, how come?" remarked Dolly. "Very simple solution. I don't sign the check." Fred and Mary got married but couldn't afford a honeymoon, so they spent their first night at Fred's parents' house. The next morning, little Johnny, Fred's kid brother, sat down for breakfast, As he grabbed his backpack, he asked, "Mom, are Fred and Mary up yet?" "No," she replied. Johnny smirked. "Do you know what I think?" His mom cut him off. "I don't want to hear what you think. Just go to school." At lunchtime, Johnny came home and asked again, "Are Fred and Mary up yet?" "No." Johnny grinned. "Do you know what I think?" His mom groaned. "Enough, Johnny. Eat your lunch and get back to school." After school, Johnny walked in and asked one more time, "Are Fred and Mary up yet?" His mom sighed. "Fine, Johnny. What do you think?" Johnny shrugged. "Well, last night, Fred came to my room looking for the Vaseline, and I think I gave him my airplane glue." 6 dots. Took the family out to eat at Applebee's. The parking lot was packed, but I spotted a guy heading to his car, so I waited about 10 minutes for him to pull out. Just as he left, a car full of young girls swooped in and stole my spot. You know the type. I rolled down my window and told them I'd been waiting for that space. The driver just smirked and said, "Too bad. Your name wasn't on it." Livid, but keeping my cool, I found another spot, parked, and went inside to eat. While we enjoyed our meal, I noticed the girls at the bar, taking shots and getting completely wasted. That's when inspiration struck. When we finished, I slipped our waiter a $20 bill and gave him a simple task. Wait 10 minutes after we leave, then go up to the girls and tell them someone called, saying their car just got keyed. Now let me be clear, I did not key their car. About an hour later, I called the waiter to see how it went. He could barely talk from laughing. Apparently, the girls lost their minds, screaming, freaking out, even calling the cops. Here's where it gets even better. The police arrived, checked the car, and found 0 damage. But they did notice something else. The girls were too wasted to drive. The cops left, circled the lot, and waited. Sure enough, not long after, the girls stumbled out, got in the car, and started the engine. Boom! Parking lot lit up in blue lights. DUI arrests all around. I didn't hear about the bonus until a week later when I went back for a beer. The same waiter saw me, still laughing about it, and filled me in on what happened. I handed him another $20, best $40 I ever spent, and I kept some drunk drivers off the road. 7 dots. A man comes home unexpectedly from a business trip, arriving after midnight. On the way, he asks the cab driver if he'll act as a witness for £50. The man suspects his wife is cheating and wants proof. The cabbie agrees. They quietly enter the house and tiptoe to the bedroom. The husband flips on the lights and yanks back the blanket, revealing his wife in bed with another man. Furious, the husband pulls out a gun and points it at the naked man's head. The wife screams, "Don't do it!" I lied about inheriting money. He's the one who paid for everything. The Porsche I gave you, the 25-foot Ranger fishing boat, the football season tickets, our house by the lake, your golf trip to St. Andrews, the 4x4, and even our country club membership. He pays for it all. The husband, stunned, lowers the gun and looks at the cabbie. "What would you do?" he asks. The cabbie shrugs and replies, "I'd cover him with the blanket before he catches a cold." Yet, a baby is born with light skin and fair hair. The expectant father, whose features are quite dark, is outraged. He gathers his weapons and heads straight for the only fair-skinned man in the entire region, a missionary the next village over who bears a striking resemblance to this newborn child. The man storms straight into the missionary's room. "How do you explain this?" he demands. The missionary, desperate from the predicament he has found himself, points out the window. Look to the field," he says. The sheep that graze there are white, and yet that one right amongst them is completely black. This is God's way. "Oh, okay, I understand," the villager says. I won't say anything about the baby if you don't say anything about the sheep. 9. Little Johnny woke up in the middle of the night and went to the bathroom. On his way back to bed, he passed by his parents' room and noticed the covers moving up and down. Curious, he called out, "Hey Dad, what are you doing?" His dad replied, "Playing cards." Still curious, little Johnny asked, "Who's your partner?" His dad answered, "Your mom." Satisfied, Johnny continued down the hall and past his older sister's room. Once again, he noticed the covers bouncing. "Hey sis, what are you doing?" he asked. She replied, "Playing cards." "Who's your partner?" Johnny asked. "My boyfriend," she answered. A little while later, Johnny's dad got up to use the bathroom. As he passed by little Johnny's room, he noticed the covers moving there too. "Johnny, what are you doing?" his dad asked. "Playing cards," Johnny replied. His dad chuckled and asked, "Really? Who's your partner?" Little Johnny grinned and said, "You don't need a partner if you've got a good hand." But a journalist goes to a poor remote village for a documentary. He saw an old man and asked him to narrate a typical happy story of his village. The old man smiled and began. "One day, a long time ago, my goat got lost in the mountains. As is our tradition, all the men of the village gathered to drink vodka first and then looked for the goat. When we finally found her, as is our tradition, we all drank some more vodka, and all the men in the village each got their turn to mate with the goat. We had so much fun that day." The journalist realized that he couldn't publish such a story, so he asked the old man if he had another happy story. The old man smiled again and started all over again. "Once, my neighbor's wife got lost in the mountains. As per our tradition, all of the village's men gathered to drink vodka and then went to look for her. As is our tradition, when we finally found her, all the men in the village got their turn to mate with the neighbor's wife. We had great fun that day." The journalist couldn't publish that story either and therefore asked, "Don't you have a story that is less happy? Something, sadder?" The old man's smile faded. His eyes welled up. In a sad, soft voice, he began. "One day, I got lost in the mountains." "Padinondre?" A guy stuck his head into a barber shop and asked, "How long before I can get a haircut?" The barber looked around the shop full of customers and said, "About 2 hours." The guy left. A week later, the same guy stuck his head in the shop and asked, "How long before I can get a haircut?" The barber looked around the shop and said, "About an hour and a half." The guy left. The barber turned to his friend and said, "Hey Bob, do me a favor. Follow him and see where he goes. He keeps asking how long he has to wait for a haircut, but he never comes back." A little while later, Bob returned to the shop, laughing hysterically. The barber asked, "So where does he go when he leaves?" Bob looked up, wiped the tears from his eyes and said, "Your house." Banirunda, an elderly man, decided it was time to move on, so he moved into a retirement home. He packed his stuff and moved into a retirement home. On his first day there, as he was unpacking his stuff into his room, he could help but notice that the woman in the room across the hall was staring at him. He thought it was odd, but decided not to let it bother him. Later that night, he went to the cafeteria to get dinner. He sat down at his table and, lo and behold, the woman from the hallway was sitting at the table next to him. There was no food on her table. She just sat there staring at him with fixed eyes. The man grew increasingly annoyed but didn't say anything. After a scrumptious meal, he went to the lounge to play nightly bingo. He was enjoying the game until he noticed the woman again, staring at him. He had enough. He went up to her and said, "Ma'am, I couldn't help noticing that you have been staring at me ever since I arrived. Could you please stop? It is a bit bothersome." She replied, "I am sorry. It is just that you look so much like my third husband." The man felt bad. "I'm sorry. If you don't mind me asking, how many husbands have you had?" "Two," was the woman's reply. Buddhamundra, a lawyer, and his two friends, a rabbi and a Hindu holy man, found themselves stranded in the countryside after their car broke down. Seeking shelter for the night, they approached a farmer for help. The farmer kindly agreed but said, "I only have room for two of you in the house. One of you will have to sleep in the barn." The rabbi quickly volunteered, saying, "My people wandered the desert for 40 years. Spending a night in the barn is no hardship for me." With that, he headed to the barn while the others settled in for the night. But soon there was a knock at the door. The farmer opened it to find the rabbi standing there. "What's the matter?" the farmer asked. The rabbi explained, "Thank you for your generosity, but I cannot sleep in the barn. There's a pig in there, and my faith considers it an unclean animal." Hearing this, the Hindu holy man offered to take his place. Grateful, the rabbi returned to the house while his friend went to the barn. Not long after, there was another knock at the door. The farmer opened it to see the Hindu holy man. "What now?" the farmer asked, exasperated. The holy man said, "I appreciate your kindness, but there's a cow in the barn. In my culture, cows are sacred, and I cannot disturb such holy ground." With no other option, the lawyer reluctantly agreed to sleep in the barn. Grumbling, he left the house, and the others finally settled in for the night. But moments later, there was yet another knock at the door. The farmer, now thoroughly frustrated, opened it, and there stood the pig and the cow.